Thank you for joining us for Cape Chronicle. I'm Mike Renick. We have two public safety topics to cover today. We'll talk to journalist Bob Miller about a new podcast and online community building around the infamous Lawless murder, a 30-year-old Benton, Missouri case that sent the wrong man to prison and still has the community talking today. But first, let's learn more about the danger of abandoned buildings with City of Cape Girardeau Fire Marshal Greg Hecht. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for being here. So you are relatively new to the Cape Girardeau Fire Department, correct?
I am. I came to the fire department here in Cape in January of this year. Most of my fire service career was spent in our neighboring department in Jackson. So an opportunity to fill this position was open, and it was an interest of mine to get into the City of Cape and work. And here we are today.
So how many years total have you been in the fire service?
It will be 20 years in next May, so almost 20 full years.
What about the fire service initially caught your eye to go that direction?
Oh goodness, there's a story behind that, but there was a time when I was in need of the fire department service. I was a victim of an accident, and to this day I still remember hearing the sounds of the siren and the sense of relief it gave me. And of course the help they gave me at the time, I you know what, I'd like to do that for somebody someday. And hopefully I've succeeded in that.
That's amazing. So the impact that you received from the service was the desire to give back and do that for others.
You could say that, yeah.
And then as far as your time thus far with Cape and as fire marshal, kind of again, same question. What was the reasons for maybe jumping into Cape Girardeau in the fire marshal role?
Well, Cape has always interested me. Just it was a larger town, more diverse than the small town Jackson. But it's been an interest of mine. As far as the fire marshal responsibilities, it's also been an interest. Construction of buildings has always been a strong interest of mine, and now I get to affect how the buildings are even being built, or ensuring that the fire and life safety codes are being followed in the buildings here in Cape.
So is that a big part of that role, is being kind of in on the ground floor of buildings that are either being built or remodeled or what have you, and making sure that safety is paramount?
I would say that's my number one responsibility, and doing what I can to ensure the safest possible features in the building for our residents and the citizens and the fire department guys. Should we ever have to respond, we want it to be safe for us too.
Sure. So what types of safety features are most buildings these days needing to be equipped with to make it safe for people there, and as you said, for you guys responding?
Well, there's a word that's used I've learned this. One of the fire marshal's most famous response is, it depends. Depends what kind of building it is, what type of occupancy it is, but primarily we're talking about the safety of the occupants, so therefore there's fire protection features built within a building, whether it's sprinklered or it may not be sprinklered, and if that's the case, then exiting becomes the primary issue for the safety of the occupants, that should something occur, they have the easiest route to get out of the building, so those exits aren't blocked. Distances aren't too long. There's so much that goes into whether it's the exit access, the exit itself, and then the exit discharge, which is getting the occupants, say where we're sitting at right now, if something would happen right now, that we can safely get out of the building.
And then you said there's also a certain degree of making sure that if there is an emergency, that the department can respond in a safe manner?
Yes. Whether the building has a fire alarm system, that would alert the fire department as soon as possible. Same as a smoke detector in our homes. Detect an emergency very quickly, and hopefully that we'll get telephone very quickly, and so our response times are diminished considerably when there's early notification.
And I imagine there's cost that goes into some of these either upgrades or when the building is new for the building owner.
Right, and there's cost goes along with it. But unfortunately, the fire codes, I'd say unfortunately, because most of the fire codes were written as a result of some tragedy.
Sure.
So the fire codes that are written now are to prevent a tragedy that once occurred from ever happening again. So whether it be a sprinkler system in an assembly occupancy, the fire alarm system in a hotel, along with the sprinklers, it's about the safety of the occupants and preventing, if a fire would start, prevent it from getting out of control or even containing it, and then to help the occupants get out of the building safely.
Are there certain materials that have to be used to be within code?
Oh, there again, it depends. But yes.
That is a popular word.
It is a popular word, but yes, fire-resistant construction, whether that be the materials used to build the wall itself or cover the wall, limiting the amount of combustible materials that can be put on the wall, and from building to building. If a building is built close enough to another, the exterior walls have to be protected as well, or a certain level of protection.
I'm sure that many people may drive certain streets within Cape Girardeau and see a building that maybe is vacant, and you think to yourself, why don't they just upgrade it? Why don't they just, it's not quite that easy, especially when you take into consideration what needs to be done to get it up to code.
Absolutely. And not knowing just how many, unfortunately we don't know exactly how many vacant buildings are in town. We drive by the same buildings that the citizens do, but without further knowledge of the contents of the building, who owns the building, what their intended use of the building is. If it doesn't get through to a City Hall permitting issue, or if it comes to it, another citizen's filing a complaint about it before it's investigated by, whether it gets to our office or the City of Cape Girardeau has a community services division, community development division, which also does inspections, and they focus more on the complaints, citizen complaints, which if it gets to that point and then we're involved, then we can step into a building and find out more about it.
We're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and continue on. When we do, we'll keep talking with Cape Girardeau Fire Marshal Greg Hecht. Stay tuned, more Cape Chronicle after this.
Prescription drug pricing points to corporate
Freedom of the press is about your right to know.
and Clark sheer athleticism.
It's about your right to be informed.
For the stock market.
Today,
No.
there are real threats to press freedom
Is reaching residential areas.
and your right to know about the world around us. We must protect our right to know, no matter what kind of news is important to you.
Great question.
Before it's too late, understand the threats. ProtectPressFreedom.org.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back to Cape Chronicle. I'm Mike Renick. We're talking with City of Cape Girardeau Fire Marshal Greg Hecht. Well, Greg, I know recently we've been hearing some about fires in abandoned houses, and I know it's kind of a touchy subject, so to speak. But obviously, no matter when or where there's a fire, you guys are responding. And in the cases of some of these abandoned houses, you kind of mentioned this in this last segment. If a home is abandoned, you guys would like to know about it. That way, maybe some of the proper precautions could be taken by the homeowner potentially.
Absolutely, and that's without knowing the list of vacant structures that we have here in Cape. Those that are vacant, we would ask the homeowners or whoever owns the residences to try and secure them properly. We have had an issue this year. We acknowledge that several of our fires this year have been within vacant buildings, And most of the vacant buildings, as you might suspect, the utilities have been cut. So therefore it's suspicious in nature. Sorry about that.
So, it's okay. So with those situations, do you see peaks and valleys as far as when you maybe see more of the abandoned buildings burning, or is it just really hit and miss based on what precautions that the owner has taken?
It's really hit and miss on that. And now that the temperature's starting to turn, one might be suspicious that, for example, in a vacant home, if some people that are homeless might be using that as a place to stay warm and dry, it's a little harder to stay warm this time of year. So several times they talk about warming fires. And it's just they're trying to stay warm. Hopefully that we would, if they do that, it would be in a safe manner. But whether or not that's been the cause of the recent fires is purely speculation at this point.
When a fire happens in an abandoned building or abandoned home, let's say, your response is no different to it as opposed to a home that's got a family in it?
Our response is no different. Now we have taken steps in recent months to try and obtain the locations and addresses of the vacant structures in town. And our dispatch, our communication center, can flag that in their center. So if we receive a phone call, for example, we receive a call of a fire in this potential address, and if it's a flagged address, they can at least let us know, but it doesn't diminish our response at all. It gives us a little notification that more than likely there's nobody within the house, so our level of aggressiveness maybe.
Sure.
Not to say it would be any less, but it might be, 2 o'clock in the morning when we would normally suspect a family to be home. Maybe that concern is not quite as high in a known vacant house.
And I guess you still never know if anyone is in there or not.
You never do. We assume that there could be somebody present inside. So as soon as the environment is safe enough for our firemen to get inside and do a search for victims, we do so just like we would in any other house.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, all the time that we have for you for today. I've been talking with City of Cape Girardeau Fire Marshal Greg Hecht. Thank you again, Greg. When we return, we'll visit with journalist and author Bob Miller. Stay tuned.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
We are very pleased that Southeast has received statewide mission designation for the arts. It recognizes us as leaders in the visual and performing arts and confirms the quality of our programs. We are Missouri's only campus dedicated to the arts, being art, dance, music, and theater. And we are nationally accredited in all 4 areas of the art. This year, we were named a Yamaha Institution of Excellence, and theater was named a top musical theater program in the country. We've seen the number of majors increase greatly, and we're recruiting nationally. We consider it critical for our programs that we demonstrate to students how to get careers in the arts. We have students who've been stage managers, they've opened their own dance studios, they're doing film work, just all types of careers. We never rest. We keep going, and there'll be something new tomorrow.
Welcome back to Cape Chronicle. I'm Mike Renick. Bob Miller covered the tragic story of Michelle Lawless throughout his career, and he's here now to tell us more about the podcast and how you can get involved. Bob, welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You were in journalism, I guess, maybe on the print side for 24 years. Is that right?
Right. I started in journalism when I was 19 years old at the Banner Press in Marble Hill, and
wow.
I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed all aspects of the paper, and had a stint at several small dailies before I landed at the Post-Dispatch, and then I came back to the Southeast Missourian eventually in '07 as managing editor, and then a year or so later I was the executive editor of the Southeast Missourian. And so I left the newspaper in the fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019. So obviously, as we talk about a couple of your endeavors that you're involved in right now, you have that strong background, that strong journalism background, but you're kind of moving it online, so to speak, right?
Right. Yeah. So you talking about the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been covering continuing to cover the Michelle Lawless case ever since I learned in 2017, going back that far, about some aspects of the case that were very concerning regarding some communications that the sheriff was having with one of the people who is now a suspect in the murder. And so I really dove into the material to find out what was going on with that. And so I've done a lot of research, interviews, all sorts of public documents, and really examined this case as thoroughly as possible. And so now I'm putting some of that information out in a podcast.
So what's the podcast consist of? I jumped on there, and it looks great, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
And the first episode is just coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first episode is out to the public. If you subscribe to my, if you're a paid subscriber to the website, thelawlessfiles.com, you have access to 3 of them.
Okay.
But for now, the first episode is out to the general public.
Okay. So the goal of the podcast, what's the kind of 30,000-foot view of that?
The view is that the public will really understand what the evidence of this case is, and also how the case was investigated. And there's some serious concerns about how the case was investigated from the outset. And frankly, there are conflicts of interest within the Scott County Sheriff's Department. And my hope is that people will become aware of this and demand that the case be moved out of Scott County and into a jurisdiction that can look at this in a neutral way.
So, as you have been developing, you said obviously you've covered this story for quite some time with your time with the Southeast Missourian and some other entities. Why do you think this case resonates so deeply for people in this area?
Well, first there's the victim. Michelle was 19 years old. She was a college student. She was coming here to Southeast Missouri State University as a nursing student. She was less than 5 foot tall. She was less than 100 pounds. She was this tiny little girl, and she was brutally murdered. She was hit. She was stopped on the exit ramp at Benton, Missouri. She was forced out of her car, down the embankment. She was hit over the head, carried up the embankment, put in her car, and shot 3 times. And so people care about her. Her family still cares about her, obviously. A lot of her friends are still around. They want answers. Everybody wants answers. They want the people who did this to be accountable. But then what happened was they sentenced the wrong man. And Josh Keyser was sentenced in 1994 for this murder. And he spent 16 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. In fact, he was not even in the state of Missouri at the time. He was in Kankakee, Illinois, which is like a 5-6 hour drive from Benton. And it was just a travesty of justice what happened to him. And so my goal is to just let everybody know why that happened and why and how the Sheriff's Department looked away from real suspects and then focused really on Josh and pinning this murder on him.
The parts of the podcast that I listen to, they're pretty intense, pretty graphic as far as some of the language and so on and so forth. Would you say, is that going to be kind of the tenor and tone of the podcast throughout, or
yeah.
I mean, just kind of it's real and here it is?
Yeah, I mean the people involved. on the spectrum from the bad guys to the good guys. You know, they're all very intense about this. It matters to them. And so strong language comes out. But, you know, if you've been sitting with this information for a long time and you're now telling it for the first time and this frustration has been building in you, sometimes it comes out in bursts. And that's just the way it is. This is a very emotional type of case. And we're not shying away from putting that emotion out there.
So what is it like for you investigating this? Is it so obviously a passion and so on? Is it something that is intimidating at all, or have you found that people are fairly open to talking?
Both of those things are true. Yes, it's very intimidating because you know some of the threats that have been made. You know what some of these folks have done, but also the people out there. If they're good folks and they want to see justice happen, they'll help you in the ways that they can. So a lot of people have talked to me. A lot of it's off the record and background, but a lot of people have pointed me in really good directions. And it's been there's a small army of people out there who are helping me get to the truth.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Bob Miller. Stay tuned. More Cape Chronicle after this.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out."
Every day,
millions of people are connecting. Father,
cosplayer,
mentor,
actor. It's time we take a step forward, come together,
and discover
how accepting our differences can make us stronger.
This is not your mom's Southeast Missouri State University. Today, you'll do the work before you get the job. And when your tenacity is tested, your strengths are stretched, and your confidence secured, we'll help you find the place where you'll be extraordinary. At Southeast Missouri State, we're proud of where we've been, but we're focused on where we're going. And right now, we have opportunities you didn't even know existed.
Welcome back to Cape Chronicle. I'm Mike Renick. We're talking with Bob Miller about the tragic story of Michelle Lawless. The lawlessfiles.com. Did you think that if you were ever to change professions, get out of what you were doing, that this was going to be something that always kind of stuck with you, and there was something beyond maybe what you were limited to at one point that you wanted to kind of see through?
Yeah, you know, I wanted to write a book, and I have written a manuscript. Hasn't been published yet, but I've always been a writer, so that was kind of my lane there. But kind of decided that based on how people consume this type of material these days, that maybe I needed to branch off and see what I could figure out in the way of a podcast. So a lot of true crime podcasts are out there. And some of them are just really, really successful and do a really great job with investigative journalism. So I decided to give that a shot.
So was there a learning curve for you to kind of actually put the podcast in place?
Oh, 100%. I had to start from scratch. I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I have a buddy who's helping me with some of the production side, putting music to it, helping with sound, some of that kind of thing. But went out, bought a microphone and downloaded Audacity and just started learning. And so it probably would have been done a lot sooner had I known what I was doing from the beginning. But it took me a little while to get just the basics of it.
So we mentioned at the beginning about the episode that just, I think, came out. what, without going deep into it, what is kind of around this episode and what will we maybe see, and how often will episodes be released?
We've got well, first of all, the first episode kind of gets into the crime itself. So I interview Rick Walter, the sheriff who reopened the case, but he was also one of the responding officers that night. He didn't know that he was going to be responding to a murder scene. He thought it was just a stalled car on the exit ramp, but he ended up being one of the first 2 officers there that night. He was just a reserve deputy, and so he didn't have a big role in the investigation, but many years later he became sheriff and reopened the case because he had heard a lot of things. So as far as when they're going to be coming out, we've got a schedule. We're going to be putting out we're going to start out with weekly, and then we're going to go to a bi-weekly schedule, but we'll communicate that to everybody so everybody knows when things are going to be released.
And again, it's the lawlessfiles.com. I know you mentioned earlier too, obviously if the public has stories to share, they can go to that website to reach out?
Right, we've got a contact button on our website. So if you have a tip or you have information that you think could be helpful, whether it's this or some other kind of thing that might be related to the case, this goes in a lot of different directions. It's not just about a murder, it's about an overall culture of corruption in the county. So if there's any tips that people want to send, they can use that. They can go to the website and send information to us that way.
Do you find this to be something that you want to branch out to maybe other cases at some point as well?
It just kind of depends. Like if this one's successful enough, I might continue to do it. But people have to understand that this has kind of taken over my life because I have a full-time job. I also have a family, this has just taken up so much of my time. I'm not sure that I can continue it on beyond this case, but if this is really successful, I might continue doing that.
All right, the lawlessfiles.com. I know we could talk a lot longer and a lot more about this, but do have to get going here in a bit. So thank you for joining us, and best of luck. And again, the lawlessfiles.com.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you to both of our guests, and thank you for joining us for Cape Chronicle. The program is a collaboration among the Department of Mass Media at Southeast Missouri State University, the City of Cape Girardeau, and River Radio. Our executive producer is Dr. Jim Dufek with producer Nicolette Brennan. I'm your host, Mike Renick. Thank you for watching Cape Chronicle.